You can sense the intensity as they await the arrival of the Tennessee team here at Neyland Stadium. The number one undefeated Volunteers prepare to race onto the field. Everything is riding on this football game. So there's a special intensity, a special urgency. Here come the Volunteers. Wherever you listen throughout the world, it's football time in Tennessee.
What's going on, YouTubes? What's up, college football fans all over this country? It's a Sunday afternoon. It's cold where I'm at, and there's an ice storm moving across the SEC land here it's in the Carolinas, so y'all be careful out there. But we're going to talk about some football after I get me a sip of coffee. But anyway, lots happened yesterday. Couch Coach, what's going on? What happened? Was there anything going on yesterday in football? Anything at all?
Well, besides just a Heisman Trophy presentation, I want to send a huge congrats to the Army Cadets for winning their third Army-Navy game in a row. Pretty impressive. Finished with a 10-game season. And listen, we all know that game is not as important as an Alabama versus Georgia, right? But for those cadets and for those young men who sacrifice what they sacrifice, it's an amazing game, amazing rivalry. And, all those young men are going off and defending our freedom. And so we can do the things we like to do, like follow college football. So congratulations to Army, a huge win, 10-win season. And, of course, we can break down that Heisman Trophy presentation as well.
Well, before I do, I'd like to thank Woodard Whitetails up in Glasgow, Kentucky, who's sponsored the last few shows, and Barry South up there. I'm telling you guys, if y'all are into a hunt of a lifetime or a corporate hunt, that is the place to go to. It's 5-star lodging, great out in the woods, and they've got some monster bucks. But let's talk about this Heisman Trophy. I've got a ball game to watch. I know y'all don't have basketball down there in Georgia, but my Tennessee Vols has got a basketball team, and we're playing the number one team in the country. We're traveling all the way across the country to play Gonzaga. Used to call it Gonzaga, but I was corrected on my pronunciation. It's Gonzaga, and we're going to make this show short because I've got to listen to that. That's going to really put us on the map if we can pull that off. But what do you think it was about this? Do you think that this rivals the Peyton Manning Heisman heist at all? There's a lot of people equating that to the Peyton Manning Charles Woodson Heisman back in '97. What do you think?
Well, first off, let's break down that 97 race. Tell me what you really feel about that one, Catfish.
I think it was the biggest Heisman heist of all time. I mean, Peyton should have won that. Listen, here's a lot of times these voters, they're clamoring to kind of go against the grain a little bit, and I think Woodson is a great player. He had a great long career, and that was the first defensive player to ever sniff being the best player in college football. But without Peyton Manning, Tennessee would have been nothing. I just think Peyton should have won that in a landslide.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, I think that, first off, Charles Woodson didn't have a bad career in the NFL.
Yeah.
So that's one way to look at it, too. Both of those guys, obviously, Peyton, if you're looking at a career, and see, this is kind of where the Heisman Trophy gets really kind of tricky, because you're looking at, are we talking about the absolute best player or best season? Because if you're looking at the best season, a guy like Charles Woodson can make a claim. Now, if you're saying over a career and a season, obviously Peyton's better, right? So that's kind of what you're looking at there. If you're looking at the best player on the best team, a lot of times that factors in. I think how a team or a player performs towards the end of the season, I think that matters. And, of course, for years and years and years, there was a lot of underclassmen bias there. I mean, there's times when Herschel Walker was up for the award 3 times. He could have won all 3 of those years in the early 80s. Marcus Allen got it over in 1 year, which I was fine with Marcus Allen getting it over him. George Rogers absolutely was not the better football player than Herschel Walker. He was not a better pro. I'm going to keep going off on that. I don't care if South Carolina fans don't like that. But, yeah, so as far as it pertains to this year, I just think that it really could have went either way. I mean, I think you and I both kind of talked in our show prep about how both of these guys kind of have their pros and cons. I just think that the momentum towards the end of the season, I think, is what pushed it over the top for Kyler Murray. I think that even though the Georgia game shouldn't have factored as high as it did, I mean, Georgia is a good opponent, right? As a Georgia fan, I don't feel like that's something that should have cost Tua a Heisman. But I think that it ultimately it did. And I think that in the conjunction with the Mississippi State games where, Tua was kind of getting beat up towards the end of the year, Kyler Murray was able to kind of keep being consistent. He got that revenge loss, this past weekend. I think that kind of pushed him over the top.
I agree, and I want to hear from you guys on your opinion of this Heisman Trophy. You can call the show at 855-489-7623. You fans are the reason why I do this, and me and Couch Coach would much rather hear your opinion. This is your platform. This show belongs to you. But let's get back into some of the possible things that you've mentioned and maybe expound upon it. I've seen some hashtags created after the Heisman presentation of hashtag Bama fatigue. Do you think that had anything to do with it?
Honestly, I think it did, man. I think that Bama fatigue, let's face it. When you're Alabama, everybody's best shot. And, earlier in the year or, before I even played Alabama SEC title game, I'm like, listen, the back end of that schedule gets hard for them. They got LSU, they got Mississippi State, they got Auburn, they got Georgia. Those are teams that are good football teams to, mediocre football teams. They blew out LSU and Auburn, but even so, those are still very physical contests. And I think that wear and tear just going into the end of the year, that does affect not just Alabama, but every SEC team. And that's what a lot of these other conferences don't get. I think the wear and tear with these SEC defenses in particular, these guys are in the water tank and, in the cool, just getting ice. No one's at 100% at this time of year in the SEC especially. So I just think that it did affect Tua, but I still believe that Tua is a phenomenal talent. You and I have both been very complimentary of Tua, and just the things that he does are amazing. He's proven it to me as a Georgia fan. Even if he had a great performance against us last year, he didn't have a good performance against us last weekend, but that doesn't change my opinion of him. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, if not the best quarterback in the country.
I wonder, and I've thought about this since I've heard who won, and I actually was thinking about it even leading up to the presentation. Why wasn't Jarrett Garantano invited to New York?
I know you guys got hosed there. They didn't put enough up into that Auburn win, I guess, for you guys. I thought that would have sealed the deal, but it didn't. So what can I say?
All joking aside, what I have been thinking is, what if we swap these players and put Tua on Oklahoma's team and brought Kyler Murray to Alabama? How do you think that role reversal would have affected their stats and their performance? Because there's no defense in the Big 12. West Virginia is probably the best defense in the entire conference. Yeah. I think that's the $1 million question. I think that without question, Tua is, to me, the more NFL caliber talent, and I think you would absolutely see more higher records. Now,
I don't think he would be as instrumental. I think they would still have a loss on that team. And I think that's what Oklahoma's saying. It's like, listen, this Kyler Murray kid came in under the shadow of Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
We weren't, he came in here, he's carried the team, right? I mean, can you really say that Tua carries Alabama? I mean, if he got hurt, you got to still keep rocking and rolling there. And that was proven even in that title game. So it's just hard. But I think the end of the year is what really put the emphasis. And maybe that's not how it should have been. But I think in college football, how you finish a season matters. How you finish games matters, and I think that ultimately played the biggest role in this, voting going the way it did.
Well, I keep hearing this term system quarterback. Tua's a system quarterback, and that sounded pretty good to me. But you know what? When Tua's in there, there's not the same playbook for Tua as there is Hurts. I think they've got a lot of good skill players. They've got great running backs, great offensive line. I don't know that, what is a system quarterback anyway? Is that somebody you just plug into a certain playbook? But is there a system at Alabama? Because they're two not vastly different quarterbacks, but they definitely have a set of plays that Tua will run that they won't even try with Jalen Hurts. What is your opinion on that?
Tua is definitely not a system quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, first off, a system that's not kind of like the phrase game manager or the phrase dual threat quarterback. I think Jalen's a very good quarterback, and I always felt the Alabama fans were a little bit harder on him than I thought. And even in my gut, going against Alabama this year, I thought, man, I really don't want to face Jalen, because I knew that our linebacking core was very weak this year, and that was something that I felt like Alabama could have a lot of success on, was running the ball, and they did run the ball very well on us, and it affected what we did. And with Tua, I felt we were a little bit better built to stop him this year because our secondary improved and we could get some edge pressure. So last year, our secondary was our strength, and so I think a lot of it's kind of the matchup deals, I think. One of the things I've seen of Tua as a player is sometimes, because he's not used to that pocket collapsing, he'll force some bad throws. And we were able to do that against him. We were able to pick off a couple passes, and he struggles a little bit with the edge rushers. But I mean, that still doesn't make him a great player. I mean, he still can make those throws that just make you go wow. I mean, I don't think Kyler Murray does anything that makes me go wow. I think he's very consistent, and I think he shows up and week to week to week, and I think that's what eventually put him over top. But if you're an NFL GM, you're absolutely looking at Tua over Kyler Murray.
Well, it really seems like this Heisman Trophy has turned into the best quarterback in college football award. Now, there's been some running backs in there, but do you think we'll ever see a defensive player, a strictly defensive player, win the Heisman? Because Woodson wouldn't have won it had he not played both ways. Do you think we'll ever see a strictly defensive player win the Heisman?
I don't think so. I mean, the closest we had to that was Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah.
Or Julius Peppers. I think both of those guys were the closest that we had, just in terms of those freak of nature kind of talent.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it has to be the kind of thing where that person would have to generate like 4 touchdowns by himself. I mean, completely shut down the game. I just don't think so. I mean, it's going to be primarily a quarterback and a running back award, but I'm okay with that. I mean, I would like to see receivers get a little bit more respect than they do. I mean, there's years that I thought that, like Larry Fitzgerald, for instance, in 2003. I mean, they gave it to Jason White in Oklahoma. Larry Fitzgerald was without question the best player in the country that year, and he proved that in the NFL. So
I agree.
But it's definitely an offensive award for sure.
Can you name 3 receivers that have won it? I think Tim Brown from Notre Dame won it. Any other receivers that's won it? I can't. Of course, I've drove through a tractor trailer, so my memory's shot. I can't think of a wide receiver. Help me on that. Has there been anybody else?
Well, I mean, Desmond.
Howard.
He was kind of like
Howard.
Desmond Howard. Yeah, he was kind of a receiver / multi-purpose kind of guy, and then you had like Larry Fitzgerald, who was the closest to it. But I mean, most of the time, I think the Heisman actually gets it right. Like last year, I felt they got it right with Baker Mayfield. I mean, you could talk about his personality, and this is another thing about the Heisman too is, you try to embody the total part of the college athlete, the athlete, and also the person. Well, that award's kind of taking a little bit of hit, especially with Jameis Winston and some of the stuff that was going on with him. Yeah. I don't think there's any question that Winston was the best player in the country that year, but his stuff off the field, it makes you kind of wonder, hey, at some point, values and what matters. So I don't know.
Well, before we get off of here, I've got a game to watch, and I'm going to make a run through and give some shout-outs. Matt7397's in here. He's always in here. My answer to that, Matt, is Tennessee 79, Gonzaga 77. Tana, College Football Talk, Matthew Keith, I appreciate you joining us, and thanks for the kind words. Let's see anybody else in here. Aaron Dawes, Hound Dog's always in here. The Vol General, Not Just Rocks is in here. Alan V, how you doing, Alan V? A great Georgia fan. I believe that's all of them. But before we go, and I have to go watch my Vols beat Gonzaga, let's take a real sneak peek. And for y'all that are watching, I'm not going to quit doing football just because my Vols aren't in a bowl game and they got robbed for not being selected into the playoffs. I'm going to still cover it. Me and Couch Coach is going to hang in there. We got some fan face-offs. I've got a great fan face-off coming up between Law Tide and Bad Dog 7676, which is an Oklahoma fan, and he can bring the trash talk. And Law Tide's going to be giving a run for his money on that one. I still haven't found a Notre Dame fan. I think they're hiding. Anybody knows a Notre Dame fan, let me know. We're going to do some NFL playoff stuff. We're going to dabble in that in January, and also as we get further into men's basketball conference play, I'm going to start cranking up some basketball live shows, and I've got some great co-hosts lined up for that really know their college basketball. But let's take a sneak peek into the playoffs. The 29th, we've got the Orange Bowl, Alabama and Oklahoma, Clemson and Notre Dame. Give me a sneak peek on. Let's go with that Clemson Notre Dame. Give me a sneak peek of what you think.
Well, I mean, I think most people are going to assume that Clemson is the better team. I think most people, I think they're favored by 11, 12, depending on what you're looking at there. But I got to tell you that if you're a Clemson fan, you got to be a little careful here because Notre Dame didn't have to play a conference game. They do have an additional week to get ready, and I think that does favor most coaches. Now, is that foolproof that means you're going to win? No, but I do think that Notre Dame is a little bit better than people are thinking there, and Clemson should win that game, but they're going to have to play good football, and they better fix that secondary because Notre Dame does have a quarterback that can sling it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, what about Alabama, Oklahoma? Do you think that, I've seen some tweets by some former players and current players that just hashtag December 29th. Do you think that's going to factor this Heisman Trophy thing? Do you think it's going to factor into how Alabama plays? I don't think so. I think that's more geared towards the fans don't like it and they're upset. But Saban runs a tight ship. He's going to be ready. I don't care what happens. I don't think there'll be that much of a difference. Now, I do think it will play a small factor, but that's about all. What do you think about this game?
I just don't think it's going to have any bearing on the game. I just really don't. Yeah. I mean, I know Nick likes to use different things because he knows how good of a team he has. Yeah. That he has to kind of extract different things when he can. But listen, once it gets kicked off and going, I can promise you neither care about the Heisman. It's just going to be about winning the game. Yeah. And you got to figure that Alabama's going to do that. I mean, I hate teams that don't play defense this time of year. Yeah. And Oklahoma, I mean, it's like two-hand touch out there. So I can't imagine that they're going to hold that Alabama offense to anything under than 40 points. I just don't see it. I think Alabama wins that one pretty convincingly.
Yeah, I don't care who's going to be playing quarterback. I think Tua will be healthy, but here's the game plan. And I know Nick Saban hasn't called me and asked me anything about some advice on this game, but they need to construct a phone booth around that field and just run,
Yeah.
and beat them down, and it's over. It is Katie bar the door.
Yeah.
You put Oklahoma in a phone booth, and you limit their possessions, because if you give Kyler Murray enough possessions, he's going to light up any defense. I don't care. He's going to light you up, and I think that's the best way to limit the possessions. You know, a lot of teams limit possessions by doing a lot of triple option and stuff, but running the football, grinding it 4 or 5 yards and just pounding it, and that second half will just be, it'll be over by halftime if they do that. But if they don't, it could turn into a ball game. I mean, Oklahoma's got a good offense, and we don't know. You know, there's some weaknesses in Alabama's defense. There's not a lot, but there's some that can be exploited.
Yeah.
And but anyway, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a good game plan? I think I'm a genius. I mean, I really do.
Yeah. I think so too. I mean, I told Law Tide, last time we were on here. I mean, I think that that's what Georgia did against them last year. Is we were able to, really run it, and we had 2 very good running backs to do that, and Alabama has the running game to do that as well. I do think that unlike Georgia, who was really stupid, didn't blitz Mayfield that entire first half, you do have to generate pressure on them, and I think that Nick's going to have to get a little creative there, just with the the blitzing, which I think he will. And I think with Alabama's defense, I think for Oklahoma, they're going to have to eat clock too. I think their natural inclination is to score. But I think that what we saw in the Georgia game was that, and one of the things I felt that if we just stuck with this game plan, it would have worked. Spread them out, go 4 wide, single back, get your speed personnel in space, get 5-6 yards a pop, eat up the clock, dominate time of possession. That's a pretty good game plan for Alabama. I mean, I don't think you want to play track meet football with Oklahoma, but you don't want to do that with Alabama either.
Yeah.
So Alabama definitely has multifaceted offense, but I agree with you. I don't think you want to play track meet ball with Oklahoma. I think you want to be able to eat the clock, and I think actually both teams want to do that. But when it comes down to it, Alabama's defense is, maybe a little inexperienced in spots, but it's not a bad defense. I think Oklahoma's defense is just bad. Yeah. So I think Alabama should handle their business there.
I agree. Well, my game's about to come on. We're gonna get on out of here, but before I go, I seen Sooner Aces in here. He's a great Oklahoma fan, and congratulations, Sooner, for your boy winning the Heisman. And there's King of Cans. I've mentioned him a couple of times in here. He's an old trucker friend of mine. He's got a great YouTube channel. He works on old cars and drinks beer on YouTube. Now, don't believe everything he says about me if he says anything. Now, if he tells you a story about me whooping up on, calling the manager up of where we used to work and talking about kicking his butt. Now, that story's true, but all the rest of them, I don't know if they'll be true. He's full of it sometimes, but he's a good friend of mine. Y'all go check him out. You can click his icon and go to channel and hit subscribe. I'm hoping you can get some subscribers there, King of Cans. But anyway, I've got a ball game to go watch and listen to anyway. I may listen to it on the radio. I've got a lot I got to get going. I like listening to the radio anyway. But thanks, Couch Coach. We've got a lot more stuff coming up. And everybody also, there's a Mr. Dugas. Y'all search it up. He's going to be a kind of a substitute and maybe a third co-host. He's an LSU fan. It's Dugas, Mr. Dugas. He's got a great YouTube channel. Y'all go sub him up. He's going to be coming on the show in the next week or two. He does a lot of LSU stuff, a lot of basketball, and I think he's a Philadelphia Eagle fan, but we'll see about that. But anyway, I'm going to get on out of here. Thanks, Couch Coach. Thanks for everybody checking in. So, go Vols! Tennessee men's basketball team, they're going to beat the bejesus out of Gonzaga tonight. I promise you that.